Folks, welcome to an extra special edition of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. We are joined by an amazing guest, Mike Hranica from the Devil Wears Prada. You may know him from the amazing band that's been around for quite a while and has plenty of amazing music, but you might not know that Mike is a huge hockey fan. We've got Mike on the show tonight to talk about how he got started in hockey and some of the amazing stuff that he's been involved with over the past couple of years. All coming right up on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends, and welcome to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. As always, thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is completely free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. But more than anything, we just really love and appreciate your support. Now, like I said at the top of the episode, you are seeing on your screen that we have a very awesome guest, Mike Hranica from the Devil Wears Prada, who has been part of the leading force for this band for many years. And for those of you who are metalheads or metalcore fans, you know the Devil Wears Prada is a pretty big legend on the scene. But what you might not know is that Mike is also a huge hockey fan. Mike, thank you so much for joining us on the episode. We really appreciate you having on the show, and we just wanted to hear a little bit about how you got into hockey and kind of trace your start back in, either as a fan or I believe you've actually played too as well, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. As mentioned before we hopped on here, I'm always down to talk hockey, probably more so than music, in fact. So I appreciate you reaching out, man. Yeah, I've loved hockey as long as I can remember. I think my earliest memories was when I was about probably 3 or 4. And I remember just being on the floor and imitating goalies while I was watching the game as if I was in net. I've never had an understanding or specifically why my dad loved hockey. My dad never played for sure. But in terms of sports, we just loved football and hockey, and sort of just as I got older, it was always cul-de-sac hockey, and then I played roller before moving to ice, and now I'm a avid beer leaguer these days. So, yeah, there's nothing better for sure.
What's your favorite position to play?
I like wing, preferably right. I've kind of gravitated a little more to right than left. I'm much more of a passer and a shooter, but I also picked up goalie during COVID, and I am awful, absolutely awful. It is so damn hard. The pros make it look silly, but it's been a fun challenge. I play goalie usually Friday mornings at a local pickup skate, or shinny, as you would say up north, but yeah, primarily forward. I prefer right wing. I like to say you can't lose faceoffs if you don't take them.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of centers out there and a lot of wingers would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
Every time they talk on podcast or broadcasts, they're always focusing on faceoffs, and I always feel like it's a lot of pressure. It's a small part of the game, but they seemingly talk about everyone like if you lose the face-off, there goes the rest of the game. So, forget the rest of the scoring and anything like that. What's a few face-offs?
Heard that. Just ruins your soul. Just losing and losing and losing.
Can understand that. Do you have a particularly favorite goalie that you've watched over the years?
Oh yeah, I mean, I loved Tom Barrasso as a kid. I'm from Pittsburgh. Barrasso is huge for me as a little kid. And I mean, Hasek more stood out to me. I'm also Czech. I'm Czech/Slovak. So I kind of gravitated toward Hasek, and more so than Waugh, let's say. But I mean, these days, if I'm watching, I'm hoping the best for Jari this season. being a Pens fan. We'll see how kind of that looks. I mean, I know it's kind of out of left field, and I'm small. I'm only 5'8", so it's hard to really pull for goalies at my size. But UC Saros is an obvious one, being a smaller guy. And there's something about Thatcher Demko and Markstrom I really like. For some reason, I can't dissect a goalie super well or anything, but there's something to their game that I gravitate towards. It's also kind of funny that I'm thinking those are all, well, Saros is a true goalie, but the other guys are CCM goalies, I think. So I don't know why I gravitate towards that. I like gear too. I'm a big guitar fan. So like anyone that plays goalie, gear is a big part of it. So I'll admit.
Yeah, you've got to have the brand name and you've got to have the style. It's all about, if you're going out there and you're making saves, you've got to look as sharp as humanly possible.
True. I'm also going to apologize for the dogs playing right now if it's making some noise. I have a puppy that's turning 1 tomorrow. Her name is Sydney. You can guess why, but yeah, so pardon the noise.
And you did mention that you're a Pens fan, so if you had to pick one Pens player, it can be Crosby, it can be anyone else, but if you had to pick one that you would say you enjoyed the most, who was your favorite Pens player?
Like all time or right now?
Either, whichever works for you.
So I mentioned Barrasso, so I wear 47. 47 is my favorite number. And that was because when I was a kid, like playing roller and whatnot, I went between skating out and goalie. So my favorite player, not goalie, was Marty Straka. So I wear 47 because I subtracted 82 for Straka and 35 for Barrasso. Just an undersized Czech guy. So that checks, no pun intended, it checks 2 big boxes for me. So Straka was huge for me as a kid, like Jan Hrdina as well as a Czech player. These days, honestly, Brian Rust does a lot for me. A lot in Rusty's game is applauded by me for sure. I don't always gravitate towards Americans, although he is a Michigander. But yeah, Rusty's a big one for me in terms of a current Pen.
It's really funny because Rust in previous shows, probably, I don't know, a year or two ago, when we were talking about players who are consistently underrated, Brian is always one that I've felt, I know that Pens fans really love him. But when you hear other people talk about players that have really made the Pens click, Rust, I feel, has really been overlooked over the years, which is crazy because he drops like a 60-point season pretty easily. But I don't know, people just don't seem to really. I don't know if it's the name brand recognition or something, but when it comes to players that I've I'll admit I'm from Baltimore, so Pittsburgh sports, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
But if I have to pick one Pen that I always felt really impressed me, I got to say Rust was definitely up there for me.
For sure. I completely agree. I'm kind of always going to pull for the underdog. I really like the signing. I know he's getting a little bit older, but yeah, he just really pops for me. I really admire his game. He can finish. He can set up well. He's definitely had to take his hits in terms of coming out of the first PP and down to the second and such. And yeah, I'm a fan. I tweeted something and he liked it once before my Twitter was taken from me by Elon Musk. But that was another thing. Rusty liked my tweet, so that goes a long way for me.
Oh, I've had one experience like that with Andre, or actually not Andre Pavlik. It was about Pavlik, but it was his teammate from Philly, I guess on the Czech national team. Who was it? I think it was Neuwirth, actually, back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like a random connection. But I did actually want to check in about something else, something that I thought a lot of folks would be really interested in hearing about in just a little bit. I wanted to ask you about the Hacksaw Hockey Club, which for anyone who's sharp and observant, Mike is actually wearing a Hacksaw Hockey Club shirt right now with the Black Girl Hockey Club logo as well. And it's a really cool story. I think it's something that, a lot of people should know more about. And in just a moment, we'll check in and hear a little bit more about how Mike and his friend formed this whole group and really what the mission of Hacksaw is and why it can be such a force for good in a sport that, traditionally hasn't always been as accepting of others. But in just a little bit, we'll find out more. Before we go any further, though, I do want to shout out our friends and partners at FanDuel. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Right now, when you bet on the Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. I know I mentioned I was from Baltimore, and Mike is from Philly. I don't know if, Mike, you're actually more of a Steelers fan, I think, from Pittsburgh, I'd imagine. But as a Ravens fan, sorry, I know that one is always a deep cut. But I'm sure throughout the year we'll have plenty of chances to check in and see how both teams are doing. But, for a lot of you folks in Winnipeg, maybe you're a Vikes fan. Maybe you think they're even going to win the division. Minnesota fans, I'm sorry. Y'all have it hard when it comes to not only football, but hockey. But you know what? No matter what, you can be sure to place a bet and hope that you are a winner when you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. And be sure to do so because you'll start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are joined by special guest Mike Hranica from the Devil Wears Prada, who is part of an amazing band, but is also a huge hockey fan. We just checked in about a lot of how he got his start as a hockey fan, his time spent playing as a goalie, but he has also been working alongside with a great apparel brand that I think a lot of folks would be super interested to hear more about. Mike, could you tell us a little bit about Hacksaw Hockey Club and how you came up with the idea with your friend for an inclusive hockey brand?
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, man. I during COVID, I'm very also mentioning picking up goalie during COVID, so I tend to be very restless. I get horrible anxiety if I don't have a lot of things to do. I have a little bit of a background running a few apparel brands, and it was during COVID, having a lot of free time. I kept thinking about how I wanted to make jerseys for a group of friends, and I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't know I don't know. I just saw a gap, and I wanted to create something. I've always had a fascination and a real sense of reward in holding something in your hand that, you created on a screen or whatever. So I realized, and one of the biggest things that always held me back in my experience with apparel brands is that I hated photography. I still do not like taking pictures of things. I try hard, but I'm just bad at it. I had a camera at one point. I no longer do. But with that, I realized that I could work with my very good friend, Anthony, who is a full-time professional photographer, and that him and I could probably come up with a brand and be able to just kind of bootstrap it ourselves. With that, I contacted another old friend who was a part of the company. He no longer is, but he basically built out a lot of our graphics, our website. And that's kind of how we started Hacksaw. I just saw, you see these brands and whatnot, and I'm a big fan of Spittin' Chiclets and whatnot, but it's just kind of goofy, and it's a lot of hockey terminology and this kind of selly thing and beauty thing. And I wanted to see something a bit sharper. I wanted to see a more of an emphasis on design and quality. And I also wanted to try to raise the voices of those underserved around the hockey community. As you mentioned, hockey hasn't always done a great job in terms of inclusivity. So we've been running Hacksaw coming up on 3 years. We've had the privilege of working with Black Girl Hockey Club a few times, Pucks for Autism, which is a great effort, a great charity around this area, around Indiana/Chicago. I'm in Wisconsin. Anthony's in Chicago. And most recently, we worked with You Can Play, which the NHL has worked with a lot in terms of, rainbow unis and whatnot, and just ensuring that no matter who you love, who you are, gender identity and whatnot, that you feel welcome in the game, and really working with all kinds of leagues, even outside the NHL, to ensure that people feel welcome. And basically that if you can play, you can play. So You Can Play was one of our newer ones. And there's always a list of more I'd love to get involved with. But Yeah, Hacksaw is always busy. It's a tiny little endeavor that I run from my house here in terms of order fulfillment and whatnot. My partner Joyce, she helps us out doing orders when I'm on tour. But yeah, very, very much grassroots, deeply personal. It's not just getting some t-shirt shipped out from some warehouse somewhere. So that's a point of emphasis as well. And yeah, we're always grinding, working on a sale right now, more unis in the works right now. And yeah, got to be busy.
And what do you kind of hope one day is kind of like the next step? Are you hoping to eventually maybe do even some team jerseys and stuff like that, or kind of branch out into other apparel?
I know it kind of comes across as aimless, but selfishly, what Hacksaw is for me is just getting as involved in hockey as possible. Like the thought of being able to do anything with the NHL, getting to travel to games or whatever, is an absolute dream of mine. My biggest regret was not playing hockey further into high school. Again, I'm 5'8". I was undersized. I was getting hurt, and I didn't have the confidence to move forward with it. And coming back to hockey, while I've been a fan my whole life, and starting to play again a number of years ago, I don't know, I can't get enough. Like my appetite and involvement in the game is just unquenchable or inquenchable, with that, if that's a word. So being able to travel, being able to get more involved with any facet, whether that's, big gear brands or teams, that's an absolute dream. And just in growing the brand, growing the vision, and hopefully working with more honest, hardworking charities, and just creating products that I want to wear is a big part of it too. On the selfish front, like again, like there's a lot of apparel and whatnot around the game and whatnot, and just none that I could identify with. And Anthony, my partner at the company, is we create a vision and a line of products, that we can passionately endorse.
Yeah, I think a lot of hockey fans out there are probably used to some of the apparel these days not being of the highest quality. I'm sure the amount of times that you see a few hockey nicknames and stuff slapped across somebody's chest. It's like, all right, maybe we can make it a little bit more of a fashion statement than just 6L or something like that. I think it's nice to have a little bit of a sharper look. Not that that's bad all the time, but once in a while it'd be nice to freshen up.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And don't get me started on Fanatics buying the jersey rights. So we don't want to go down that road.
We don't use that name in this household, but but
anyway,
Fanatics hatred aside, in just a little bit, I did want to ask you a super fun question. One actually about the Winnipeg Jets, to know if you've actually really seen much of them, or if you even had a player that you gravitated towards, and to see if you even had some Stanley Cup picks for what should be a very interesting season, especially for you Pens fans, since y'all just got Erik Karlsson. We'll dive into all of that in just a moment. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are joined on tonight's episode with some closing thoughts from Mike Hranica from the Devil Wears Prada, who is not only big in the metal scene, but also an even bigger hockey fan. Mike, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I just wanted to ask you a couple of fun questions. First off, have you ever really watched the Winnipeg Jets before? I know that you're a Pens fan, you're a diehard hockey fan, but when it comes to the Jets, not often the team that you see people from out of market catching games of.
I actually very much enjoy the Winnipeg Jets. If this was, a Islanders pod or a Rangers podcast, I would have been missing appointments intentionally, but I really like the Jets. I heard a story about Blake Wheeler buying a woman's groceries who forgot her wallet. And ever since, I know he moved on to the Rangers now. But between Wheeler and Mark Scheifele as well, I know there's been some conversation. You were obviously much closer to the fact than me about Scheifele as a locker room guy, and some questions there. But I also love Connor Hellebuck. I mean, that's another. It's kind of funny. Scheifele and Hellebuck are two names that I can never spell in my hockey group chats, But to answer your question, I do like the Jets for sure. I know there are a lot of question marks, and it's kind of funny too because it's a bit of a different. Besides like Kyle Connor in terms of like speed and hands and shot, like it's more of a bigger team. And being a Pens fan, I love 200-foot hockey and I love goals. So there isn't a lot of similarities there. There's just something I've kind of attached to. I know it's silly, but I think it even kind of comes down to the colorway. And I've always wanted to even do like some Jets hacksaw gear and whatnot. But in terms of an out-of-market team, I do check in on the Jets pretty regularly, flipping through games.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned, the team being on the larger size, because like when you ask Jets fans about that, they tend to say, "Oh, the Jets are undersized. They have too many small players," and like the Jets are like the fifth tallest team in the NHL. So I'm like, I don't know how much taller Winnipeg can possibly get.
That's a very good point. I'm looking at the roster now, and it's evading me. Undersized D-man that was an all-star. Why can't I think of his name?
Was it an all-star? Maybe Enstrom? Was Enstrom ever an all-star? I forget.
Josh Morrissey.
Oh, Morrissey. Yeah, Jomo.
Yeah, he's an undersized guy, right?
Yeah, he's not particularly big. He is pretty sturdy. He takes a lot of knocks.
He's kind of like a Jared Spurgeon on the back end. I kind of assimilate to a little bit, but yeah, that's funny that you say Jets fans think they're undersized, because I'm I pay a lot of attention to that as a mere 5'8" myself.
Did you ever get to see Dustin Byfuglien back in the day?
I did. I lived in Chicago a long time. I say that like it was forever. I lived in Chicago about 9 years. And in those 9 years were the 3 cups and whatnot. And I remember one time a friend of a friend did the graphics for the scoreboard at the Madhouse, and he got us a box. And it was the only time I ever saw the Hawks from a box. And I remember Big Buff broke open the scoring like 30 seconds in against the Blue Jackets that game. But yeah, I mean, he's a cinder block.
It's kind of funny because like, and I didn't even know this for the longest time, he was actually, I think, the last pick of the draft that he was taken in. And when he was taken, somebody from the Hawks organization said he would never become an NHLer because of like his weird build and style. And somehow the career that he carved out, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously how he left the game has been bizarre. I saw that he's skating a little bit here and there, but he had a lot left in the tank, and obviously for whatever reasons he decided to step away. But yeah, total legend, total absolute legend. Buff was just like, oh my, yeah. Can you like skating on the same ice as him? It's terrifying.
I think that's the general impression. People, if he came over to you and there was a bit of a scrum, I think most people need to back away.
Yeah, that's scary. It's absolutely terrifying.
I know the Pittsburgh Penguins used to have a bit of a tough reputation, but these days I know that they're a little faster and a little more focused on speed. I guess when it comes to like the Penguins and Jets, we've had some fun games over the year. Have you ever caught any of like the Winnipeg Pittsburgh games? I don't know why, but for some reason they're legitimately really good.
Yeah, I mean, I watch every Penguins game, so unless I'm on like a flight, maybe. But my partner, she's a Bruins fan, so that's a little tough. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I hate to admit it, but I'm a huge Pasternak fan, because just how can you not, like, in terms of like his just personality and whatnot, he is so funny. So again, she's not a Rangers fan, so it's not too brutal around here, but we just sit around watching hockey, and if I'm on tour, I have to watch it on my laptop, which I hate, versus my TV. But some TVs on the bus, if I'm able to get games on the bus, I really just don't miss Pens games. So that's the way it goes for me, at least.
And since you're a rather avid Pens fan, this is going to be a loaded question, but who do you see winning the Stanley Cup this year? Because it sounds like you follow quite a few teams. You know what's going on. What team, biases aside, who do you think is going to hoist it at the end of the year?
I honestly don't know. I mentioned I listen to every episode of Chicklets. I also listen to absolutely every episode of 32 Thoughts. I love Merrick and Friedge. And I thought one of Merrick's takes was actually really astute, in that he said that the only 2 guaranteed teams to make the playoffs in the East this season will be the Hurricanes and the Devils. And I very much agree. Like, it is so up in the air. I think in the West, the Avs are really going to bounce back. Obviously, without Landeskog, that's missing a huge piece for an entire season. I think they had a real hangover there in terms of coming off, the Cup run 2 years ago. But I really can't say. I don't think the Cats are going to be able to do what they just did. I don't know, man. I think the Canes are going to come up short again. I think the Devils are still too young. I can't give you a solid reason. Talk to me. Everyone's tired of hearing me talk. How do you feel? Who are you watching?
I think for me, this year is going to be really strange because I don't know. Looking at the field, like you said, it's very kind of up and down. I have an eye, and you're going to hate this, but I do wonder if the Rangers are going to somehow emerge out of the East. I know. Yeah, New York is one of those teams where on paper,
it's a Trouba bias, isn't it? You still like Trouba. That's what's happening here.
Oh, yeah. It's really funny that, when Trouba was a Jet, Wheeler was his captain, and now he's Wheeler's captain. So it's kind of like...
I didn't think of that.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned that, and I was like, that's kind of an odd situation. Like, I don't know what their relationship was like. I'm sure that they, got along, but I don't know if back in the day, the locker room thing was all about like a generation gap. Now that Trouba is older, I don't know if that's as much of an issue, but it's kind of a funny thing. I feel like the Rangers maybe have a shot. They always seem to come up short. I don't know, something a little underwhelming about that team. I guess out also in the East, Pittsburgh's an interesting one. Carlson is a huge acquisition. I love Eric. He's one of my favorite players. I'm a little sad about the jersey that he's wearing, but I'll tolerate it. I'll tolerate it.
Funny, I actually hate Eric Carlson. I've always hated him, and now we got him, and I'm like, we got him. He's a Penguin. I love him now.
Yeah, he's one of those players where you have two thoughts about him. Either you love that he scores and that he's an amazing attacker, or you hate that he just stands there when the puck is flying around and Buddy wants to get up the ice immediately as quickly as possible and do his thing, but defending not his best point.
Right, and people, I don't know. I still want to see some gaps filled. I don't hate moving away from Dumo. I do honestly already miss Petrie and Jan Ruta. Petrie actually to the Wings today. I didn't see that come in. I thought he'd stay with the Habs after his history there, but we need some stay-at-home D-men for sure. At the same time, I just read a Letang quote about, what our PP1's or our number one PP is going to look like. And it's like, yeah, that's exciting. So it can't be hockey season soon enough for sure for me. It's goaltending is a big question mark. I think Jari, a lot of it does kind of fall on his health. Nedeljkovic is exciting. He just, his up down is so fast. That's one thing I really caught on with him in what was it, Carolina and Detroit. So we'll see what that tandem looks like. I don't hate moving on from DeSmith. I don't wish him any ill will, but goaltending wasn't great in recent years, and I think that's going to be a point of emphasis, as well as just really our defensive end of the game. I think a lot of pressure is going to be on PD2, Marcus Pettersson, as being that kind of stay-at-home defensive force, having a physical edge to his game. We'll see where that falls. But then Lars Eller's coming in too. We'll see. I'm giddy, man. I'm so excited.
Yeah, you guys have I would say you have one of the more unusual seasons. I mean, there's no real I guess there are some expectations, but I feel like this year, not only for the Pens, but the league in general, a lot of uncertainty. I mean, the Knights, I feel like, are one of the few teams that are they're going to be pretty good again. But, hockey's random, a lot of chaos throughout the season. Anything can change. And I think your dog agrees.
I'm so sorry. Jets fans are going to hate me for being a Pens fan even more. My partner's car is rolling in right now. I'll move to try to quiet a little bit.
Oh my goodness! Actually, it's all good. Oh man, I think your dog might also be a Bruins fan.
Oh no, she is not. Neither of them are Bruins fans. They wear their Pens collars. Millie is I call her Barry Millie Melrose. So hockey runs deep in this household, and the dogs are not Bruins fans. Absolutely not.
I guess we'll leave you with one last question. It'll be a fun one, but if you had to pick, I guess one Jets player and one Pens player that you'd want to see in like a one-on-one matchup, who would you choose?
I don't know. I kind of want to just like almost like, the TJ Oshie 5 goes in the shootout years ago. Sid versus Hellebuck would be pretty exciting.
I feel like that's a fireworks show waiting to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I'm surprised we haven't talked about Kyle Connor at all. I mean, sort of like I don't know, you wouldn't want to say like a little bit of like a Pasternak like kind of player, maybe almost like kind of like a Gensel player. Better than Gensel, I know that, but yeah, let's just go shoot out Sid versus Connor.
I think if I had to choose one on the other side, I would probably go Ehlers. Gosh, I feel bad saying Jari because, it's probably not going to end super well. But Ehlers versus Jari, I think, would be a pretty good one. Nick is one of those players that's real crafty. KFC, Kyle, he's a fun player. Over the years, I've had quite a few thoughts about some of the other sides of his game because, somebody nicely described it as Kyle Connor is very good at the things Kyle Connor is good at. Which was the most generous way of putting it.
He scores goals, period.
Yeah. I think there have been some questions about the rest of his game, but, as long as he's putting the puck in the back of the net, people can't complain too much. But, Mike, I just wanted to say thank you again so much for joining us. Where can folks find you on social media or anything else?
Oh, I really appreciate you having me on again. I can talk hockey forever. I'm on Instagram at MKHRNC. I was on Twitter, but I got hacked and I'm unable to get my account back. So no longer on Twitter. Hacksaw is, you can check out Hacksaw Hockey on Instagram, hacksawhockey.com. I'm building a new website right now. That's just MikeHranica.com. Prada's going on tour here in a few weeks. 3 weeks-ish or something. So I'll be busy out on the road again. And yeah, man, I really appreciate you having me. I wish all the best to the Jets. We also didn't talk bonus. Like, how can't you root for that guy? But yeah, I appreciate you having me.
And folks, be sure to give Mike a follow and check out Hacksaw Hockey Club. We appreciate him joining us for tonight's episode. That is going to be all the time that we have. We hope you'll stick around for more off-season coverage. And as always, have a great night and go Jets go.